I call it the magic of the pasture. When you see 30 species growing and hundreds of different insects and bugs and, so many different seeds and wildflowers and the sounds and the smells and everything that's in the pasture, it's like this unbelievably rich, just complex ecosystem that gets us so excited to share with people.
From the Weston A. Price Foundation, welcome to the Wise Traditions podcast for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts. We are your source for scientific knowledge and traditional wisdom to help you achieve optimal health.
Hey everybody, I'm your host Hilda Labrada Gore. This is episode 204 and our guest today is farmer Paul Grieve of Primal Pastures in California. If his name sounds familiar, it's because we had him as a guest on episode 127. In that podcast episode, he peeled back the curtain on labeling and helped us get a handle on what terms like organic, antibiotic-free, and cage-free really mean. Today, he unveils the life of a farmer in the day-to-day. Many of us romanticize farm life. Paul tells it like it is. Today he talks about how chronic arthritis and inflammation got him into the Wise Traditions diet and consequently into farming. He discusses how all-consuming the work can be and yet why he continues to love it so. He shares his values and vision for his farm to be both ecologically and economically sustainable. Our conversation is basically a primer on farming, the grittiness of it, along with its beauty and transformative power. Before we get into it, a shout out to our sponsor, Grass-Fed Kidney by Ancestral Supplements, putting back in what the modern world has left out. New Zealand-sourced nose-to-tail organ meats and bone marrow in convenient gelatin capsules. Our family loves these supplements. We recommend them highly, so order yours today at ancestralsupplements.com. And a reminder that the Wise Traditions Conference is fast approaching. It's November 15th to the 17th, just north of Dallas, Texas. Make sure to sign up today at wisetraditions.org and use the coupon code WTPodcast for $20 off your registration. That's $20 off because it's the 20th anniversary of the foundation. The Wise Traditions Conference is where ancestral wisdom meets modern science. This is Holistic Hilda, and you're listening to Wise Traditions. Welcome to Wise Traditions, Paul.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I'm so happy to be here, you guys. I'm at Primal Pastures here in Murrieta, California, and it's just gorgeous, and it's huge. And it didn't start out like this, did it, Paul?
No, not at all. It was a little 2-acre backyard before we ever got even any chickens before, so.
When you started, you were just starting from scratch, and how did you even know where to begin? Remind me.
It was really no history in my family. We'd never farmed before. We'd never done any of this stuff. It was really came from health problems. So I had really bad arthritis, chronic kind of inflammation and brain fog, and wasn't sleeping well and just not feeling good at all. And that experience led us to eating paleo and following Weston A. Price, and basically from that trying to find good food and good meat. And we were really upset about the meat options that were in the grocery store. They had the right labels, and it sounded really good, but like we covered in the last podcast, it didn't mean anything. And so we just got 50 chicks and put them in the backyard at my in-laws' house and started going for it.
And you all lived happily ever after.
Oh yeah, it's been nothing but easy ever since then, right? I wish.
No, seriously, tell us a story of some hardship you met, because I want people to know that farming isn't easy.
Well, I'll share one that actually just came to mind, is that when you go from city life to farming, there's something called the 24/7, 365 Workweek that nobody's ever used to or really told you about. So you can think that way, and it's oh yeah, that's a lot. But the reality is, once you get livestock, it's game on. It's like having a kid, It's never down, there's never a dull moment, and you're on 24/7, 365. And that was so much for us to get used to, not even being able to drive out to Orange County for the day or go take a one-day vacation. I mean, it was, you're there, you're on the farm every day, all day. And that was a lot for us to get used to, for sure.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. And then another one, so it's the power of sort of nature. And when you're in this together with nature, it's not a controlled environment. And so I remember very, very well ordering something like 500 chicks, and we raise them up and everything's good and it's all great. And then we go to harvest them, and only about 200 birds make it back into the freezer. And we're kind of what the heck, what's going on, And then the next month we do it, 500 chicks come in, we put 150 back in the freezer. And now we're starting to get worried and basically got to the point of just about going out of business, because you can't do that for very long. Feeding all these birds and all this, and where are they going? We don't have anything to sell. And that was coyotes. And so there was coyotes, hawks, owls, neighbor dogs, bald eagles, regular eagles. I mean, anything likes to eat young chicken. And so we had to learn basically that this isn't a controlled environment. Like, you're participating with nature. And now you either have the decision to go out and force your will upon nature, or you can learn an alternative way. And so forcing our will upon nature was never part of this. I was trained as a sniper in the Marine Corps. And the very first day I went up there with my gun to go shoot coyotes, it was the worst feeling of my entire life. And I was like, I'm not going to do this if this is what it takes, I'll go back and have my desk job. But we learned about a natural way to do it, just like anything, a natural way. And so we have these livestock guardian dogs. Now we have 24 livestock guardian dogs, and they protect the livestock, again, 24/7, 365, which they do really well. They don't ever ask for a day off, so it's nice.
Tell me more about just day-to-day life on the farm. So you had your chickens, then you started growing your operation. Did it ever come to the place where it wasn't 24/7?
Yeah, I mean, it is now, thankfully, but for the first few years, it was just us living on the farm, no employees, and it's a tough environment, It's everything. So this is small farming. This isn't large scale or commodity agriculture or anything like that. This is not only the farming piece, but it's also the processing, it's the slaughtering, it's the distribution, it's the sales, the marketing, the inventory. You run every part of it, right? So a normal day on the farm starts way early because it's not like another business. I mean, you have animals that need fed first thing in the morning. So for us, it's a lot too. We're moving every animal to fresh pasture every day, making sure irrigation's working, making sure they have water, and making sure they have their shade, and checking for any problems in the flock or herd or whatever we're doing. So a lot of times it starts out with just moving, feeding, and watering animals. That's like the first thing that has to take place on the farm. And then after that, it becomes the business part. So maybe that part takes you 3 or 4 hours, and then you switch on to like your business hat, and then you start doing your website and your sales and marketing and social media, and thinking about how you're going to get customer orders out, and all that sort of goes for an 8-hour day. And then you have your night chores after that. So then you have another 3-4 hours of work at the end of the day, closing up the animals and making sure, again, they have food and water for the night, making sure they're safe, checking the dogs. Usually half of the day is spent fixing something that broke, or maintaining something, or chasing a dog that got out, think about those things, but usually there's a lot of that too.
And so how do you have time even for family? I know you have a wife and some kids, right?
Yeah, so that was actually like the problem. We came to this breaking point of, this is great. It's ecologically sustainable. It started to get to the point where it was, economically sustainable, but it needs to be socially sustainable too. So we got to this point where it was like, that's cool. The business is good. It's doing well. We finally hired an employee, and, it was feeling like we had to do that because socially it was starting to become suffocating. And it was like, you can't work 12, 18 hours a day, every day, 7 days a week for years and expect your family life to be good and your kids to know who you are. And it was like very obvious that was necessary for a season. But as the business, that's why profit's so important. So we were able to take those regenerative profits and put them into hiring really great young people and training them so that we could eventually separate ourselves a little bit. But that process took a while, and it was hard on the family for sure.
Well, I'm glad you're talking a little bit to this business side, because there may be some people listening who are like, I want to start a farm, I want to do it right, and they need to have their eyes wide open as to what it takes.
Yeah, there's a lot to it, and the farming's honestly the easy part. The business side of it's the hard part. And you hear, 9 out of 10 businesses fail. Well, that's probably the same, if not higher, for farming businesses. And the hard thing about it is it's very romanticized too. Most people that go into farming aren't doing it for the money in the first place. So it's like you put behind you, profits, or you put behind you your family because you are chasing this romantic, beautiful dream, and you're walking the farm today. It's beautiful. Like, it's a great environment to be and to raise your kids and everything else, but we're all about regenerative agriculture, which can't just be ecologic. It needs to be economically regenerative, and it needs to be socially fulfilling and regenerative too. Yes, you're going to have your long days and your hard days, but we're looking at this as a 50 or 100-year play. So I'm not going to go sacrifice my marriage so that I can have a really healthy farm. All things need to be in balance, and that's a hard balance to keep, honestly.
It sounds like it, and it reminds me, what you're saying reminds me of what Alan Savory says, holistic management. we have to manage the land and the animals in such a way that it benefits them, but it benefits us and it benefits the community. It's a bigger picture than just, one thing or the other. So it can't be out of balance is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I think that's where industrial food's gone awry. You know, we've put economics at the number one by far, and it's not this nice triangle. It's like economics dominates all. So it's really cheap food. It's huge profits for corporations. And those things have driven away stuff like the ecology or social or really anything else. So now you have the ecology ruined. You have these neighbors in these poor rural towns that are like, if you have a factory farm dropped in your little rural town, there's stories, and you can look this up on YouTube, of people that can't even go outside if the wind's going the wrong way. You know, their property value's cut in half. They can't drink their well water anymore because the toxic waste is infiltrating and leaching into the groundwater. And so, we've sacrificed really important things for one, which is economic, and that's important too, but it's not like the end all to be all or something. And we've messed that up pretty bad in this country, I think.
And I've been thinking a little bit about how if I were a farmer, I hope this isn't the case for you, but I might be tempted to cut corners because of profit. So suddenly I'm feeding my animals soy feed, which normally I wouldn't want to do because I know a lot of it is genetically modified, but maybe it's cheaper. Like, how do you avoid those temptations?
It's kind of tempting, I think, if economics becomes everything to you. For us, it's always, here's our standard. If this business can make money, then great. If it can't, I'll go get another job. Like, I'm not tied to this being my sole income for life or something. I've got my MBA and I'm trained. I can go get a really good job doing something else. I have no interest in sacrificing my integrity in order to, trick people or make a quick buck. Like, there's a lot easier money out there to be made than making it in agriculture, And so it's just never been worth it to me to think about sacrificing quality or integrity by any means, or even lacking transparency just so that I can stay in this or something. If it came to that, I'd be much happier just getting a different job,
So speaking of integrity, I know Joel Salatin recently changed his philosophy. In other words, his farm was only delivering within a certain radius of their property, the meat and the different goods that they sell. And suddenly he's changed to being willing to ship. And some people are giving him a hard time. Why is that?
Well, I think people misconstrue the idea between integrity and continuity. And I think that Joel is a man of amazing integrity. We've modeled almost the whole farming system that we have out here off of him and his values and the way that he sees the world and stuff. And just because you shift business practices or you start doing something you didn't do before isn't necessarily like an issue of integrity. It may be a changing world and you need to adapt to the times and do things differently. If Joel, that's not really a good example, but say Joel started feeding GMO feed and he did that without telling people or explaining why or doing anything else, that is an integrity issue. And I think that's an obvious one, but just shifting with the times, FedEx, everybody's used to having things delivered to their house now, and that's the way food's distributed. We say in Southern California, there's $440 million a day spent just on food. If we can get 0.001% of that, we're so thrilled beyond belief, and we probably will never get anywhere near that. But Joel's just trying to adapt with the times, and so people are used to that. And not everybody can drive out to the farm and go pick up their order or something like that. And expecting that is pretty brutal. And he was actually really slow to the take on shipping and home delivery. We've been doing that for 5 or 6 years now, because that's just how people are used to buying food. So to the haters out there against Joel, just because he did something one way 30 years ago doesn't mean that's how you need to do it forever. If it fits within your values and your integrity and you're transparent about it, give the guy a break. If you don't like it, then don't order. Come on. I really, I think we commented about it pretty publicly that we're supporting him and what he's doing, and people need to absolutely lay off. If there's more polyphase products out there this year than last year, I think that's a win for everybody. Ecology, environment, community, everybody. And he's an inspiration for small farmers, and I hope that he's adapting with the times.
Absolutely. And think of this. I think you even said this on social media. If people get introduced to nutritious, nutrient-dense, properly raised meat, then maybe they will shift to a local farmer. But it's almost like his products could be the gateway to getting local farmers in better business too. Getting more business too.
Yeah, the world's getting smaller. It's getting easier and easier to ship. The carbon footprint of something like FedEx is going down all the time. And the reality is, let's support people that are doing great things. Like, why would we? It almost reminds me of the Weston A. Price paleo debate a few years ago. It's like, no, you guys, tiny differences. Like, we're both doing amazing things on both sides of the coin. Let's keep it 100 between everybody, and like, let's just support each other. And of course, if you have a local farm, buy from that person instead of going and ordering something online. But we get comments from people all the time that are in markets that you wouldn't think are food deserts, Colorado or Washington State or Oregon, states that we ship to, and they go, it's an hour and a half for me to get to the farmer's market. As much as I would love to, it's not realistic. I have 3 kids. I'm driving them to soccer. I'm doing all these things. Like, I'm just not going to do it. So the fact that you guys ship is a lifesaver, and it's getting real food into people's, onto their kitchen tables, and like, great, all for it,
Coming up, Paul tells us why visiting a local farm can be an emotional, transformative experience.
You're listening to the Wise Traditions podcast from the Weston A. Price Foundation. We pause now to recognize our sponsors.
Grass-fed kidney by Ancestral Supplements. Ancestral Supplements offer New Zealand-sourced, nose-to-tail organ meats, bone marrow, and kidney in simple, convenient gelatin capsules. There's an old Comanche narrative that has been retold for generations about a young man who loved his wife so much that when she died, he fed her the fresh kidney of a buffalo, and then she came back to life. This tale has remained with the Comanche people to serve a greater purpose, to pass on the wisdom of feeding kidney to those who are ailing. There are many accounts of our ancestors taking an animal. The young and the warriors favored liver and heart, while the ailing, frail, and the old received kidney to build strength, immunity, and vitality. Kidney provided concentrated amounts of kidney-specific proteins, B12, selenium, and DAO, that are now absent from the modern diet. This nourishment is known to support kidney, urinary, thyroid, and histamine health. So visit ancestralsupplements.com to see what they can do for you. Ancestral Supplements, putting back in what the modern world has left out. And make plans to attend the Wise Traditions Conference this November, the 15th through the 17th, just north of Dallas, Texas. It is the place to be to enjoy nutritious food, learn healing wisdom, meet friends, and be inspired. Go to wisetraditions.org to sign up today and use the coupon code for podcast listeners only, WT Podcast, for $20 off your registration. The Wise Traditions Conference, where ancestral wisdom meets modern science. This is Holistic Hilda, and you're listening to Wise Traditions. So I want to pivot now and ask you, I know you have events on your farm. Is your strategy to introduce people to this way of living and this way of farming through community dinners?
Yeah, one of our biggest things since the beginning has been transparency, and a big part of that is getting people out to the actual farm. So social media is amazing for transparency because we can post pictures and videos every single day about what we do. But you'll vouch for this. It's not the same as going to the place and actually walking it and kind of seeing the magic in the pasture and in the air and smelling it and just feeling it. Like, that's such a thing every day, an everyday occurrence 50 years ago or 100 years ago, where people would be on farms buying their food directly from farmers, and we've lost that. And I think that's totally what's sabotaged a lot of our food system now, is that people just don't have that connection anymore. And so we're all about it any way we can. So we do farm-to-table dinners, we do monthly farm tours, workshops, events, like any way we can get people out and kind of just have them be here with us. It doesn't need to be super educational. It's just about actually being here and seeing it and knowing where your food comes from and knowing your farmer, being able to come and shake our hands and talk to the staff, and like, it becomes real at that point. I think that it's really transformative for the community.
Well, what will you show people when they're on the farm tour? I'm kind of excited because I'm going to go on one later.
You're going to get the mini farm tour today. A normal monthly farm tour, so we take up to 100 people, and it sells out every month. It's unbelievable. And this is like the educational tour. So we go through every species. We start with the cattle, we move to the sheep, we do the pigs, we do the chickens, the broiler chickens and the meat chickens, we do the livestock guardian dogs, and we just explain how we run each animal, kind of the differences between something like an herbivore and an omnivore and what we feed them or don't feed them. We go into a lot of like what the industry does compared to what we do, so people understand. And we're not trying to bash anything, but it's important to show how we're different. And what people are getting when they learn, what does free range really mean? And people are like, oh my gosh, and then you show them what we do, and it's like, okay, they understand it that way. We also do a pasture walk, so they get to really feel, I call it the magic of the pasture, when you see 30 species growing and hundreds of different insects and bugs and, you know, so many different seeds and wildflowers and the sounds and the smells and everything that's in the pasture. It's like this unbelievably rich, just complex ecosystem that gets us so excited to share with people. And I think it's just an eye-opening experience for them to walk the fields, to see the animals. So some people come because, you know, they just want to pet animals, and that's awesome. If that's what gets you here, great. You know, they're going to pet the pigs and play with the dogs and Instagram with the cows. And then other people come like really wanting the detailed information and asking amazing questions and just super engaged, but try to make it something for everybody. So it's like the kids can come out, and if it's hot, we'll turn on the sprinklers and they get to run around in the sprinklers, or like the dogs will chase them around, or they can try to ride a pig, you know, just different things like that. But really important, it is a working farm. Like, it's not a petting zoo. We don't set it up special for a tour compared to any other day. So sometimes we'll demonstrate like the movement of the sheep. We'll set up that next electric fence and we'll show them how we herd the sheep to the next paddock and how long we keep them there and why we do that, and like really going into the why and the how, so that when people hear a word like grass-fed, or they hear regenerative, or they hear like rotational grazing, they really know what that means.
Do you think for some people it's like they're visiting a foreign country when they come to your farm?
Literally. So when somebody comes from, and I have to remind myself of this, like when they come from a high-rise in LA, and that's their life, like that's their reality, you know? And I forget that people live like that because I'm out here all the time. I've seen people cry from seeing a chicken lay an egg, and it's like they've become so, not like they did anything wrong, but just their life has become so disconnected from nature and like animals and livestock and really the way that I think we're built to live. It's a really moving moment for people to see the way that food's produced. And it's like, oh my gosh, how long have I been buying eggs? I've never thought about the chickens. Or how long I've been buying chicken? I've never thought about the chickens even, right? And it's this unbelievable experience. Another one we do is a processing workshop. Have you done that one?
No.
Okay. I thought that you did the processing workshop. So we'll take a chicken from pasture to plate, and it's a really moving experience for a lot of people. We get probably 50% vegan, vegetarian that come to those classes because they go, I want to at least know what goes into this if I'm going to start eating meat again. And that's a huge part of our customer base, is people that were formerly vegan or vegetarian that want to eat meat again, but they want to be more comfortable with the process. And every class, we've had dozens of them, every time there's people crying and having like a really emotional experience. And it's great. Like, we're here to support that, to foster it. Like, it should be emotional. We always say that. The fact that eating meat isn't emotional is a huge problem, right? I'm not saying it's bad emotion, but you should feel that like gut level, this animal sacrificed so that I can live. You know, that's a big, big deal. And don't get me started, but that goes with our leafy greens and vegetables and fruits. There's always death for life. That's the way it is. So having gratitude when we eat is huge.
But do please explain that, because I think a lot of people don't understand that even when we're eating a plant-based diet, something has to die.
Yeah, and I love plant-based diet. I think it's great. Like, I'm all for regenerative plant-based diet. The problem is when you just go, well, I'm going to stop eating meat, therefore nothing's dying when I eat. It's very logically false. And I can demonstrate, we can walk out in the field and look at the 100 insects that are within 1 square foot area, or the squirrels that run through here, the snakes, the spiders, the birds, the gophers, the rabbits. When you harvest a 40-acre kale field industrially, there is a ton of death. I would say there's more death on a 100-acre kale field than there is on a 100-acre pastured poultry farm, by far. So like, you can't just say, I don't have any blood on my hands because I didn't eat meat. There's not a problem with having blood on your hands if it's done in a conscious way and you know what you're doing and you're doing your best to, I think, minimize the suffering and stuff. But what is a pesticide, right? Like, a pesticide is a way to slowly kill a ton of animals, which are, sure, they're insects, but like, is a cow somehow more important than a caterpillar or a mouse or an ant or something that's so small we can't see it? Like, I don't think so. I think everything's important in the creation. I think everything has its own place. And so the idea that we can just blindly kill small animals, but then the animals that we eat are off limits, like, no, I'm sorry. That's a logical fallacy, you know?
Right. It doesn't make sense.
And we've been seeing it over and over. And so I think that we have amazing movements on both sides. So stuff like carnivorous, omnivorous, whatever, you can do that conscientiously. You can also do plant-based conscientiously. It's just about let's focus on regenerative systems, whether they're plants or animals or anything else,
So let's finish up the farm tour.
Yeah, so it always ends with sort of a bunch of giveaways and fun games and questions and quizzes. We always sell some swag and some meat boxes and do a bunch of fun stuff at the end too. But then there's always this invitation back or to share. And like we always want people, if they had a good time, to bring their friends back or their family, and really like shouldn't be a one-time thing. This is your farm. We want this to be where you literally get your food from. And so feeling like it's somewhere you can come and go as you please, and we're family now, it's really impactful for us too. So there's always that. It ends with an invitation to come back,
And I kind of came today because you invited us to this dinner. Talk to us about what the dinner looks like.
Yeah, so the Farm to Table Dinner is like our marquee event of the year. We only do a couple of them a year, and it's just a chance for us to really spend some quality time with our customers and friends and family. My whole family comes, so there'd be like 12 of my family there. And a lot of our close friends come, and customers from all over LA, Orange County, San Diego, Palm Springs typically come out. We like to partner with always a winemaker, a brew maker, and a chef. And so our winemaker today is Marco Cavallari, who's relatively unknown in the U.S., but he's a very, very important Italian winemaker from Eastern Italy, and he does an organic, biodynamic, olive oil plus vineyard. And his stuff is so amazing. He does a lot of consulting in the Temecula Valley for people that are trying to grow more organically. But I'm just a huge fan of the way he articulates and explains, and you're going to have a blast drinking his wine and listen to him talk. The average age of his employee is, I think, 75 years old. Everything's hand harvested. He has 1,000-year-old olive oil trees on his farm. Like, it's magic, I can't wait to go. Wow. So he's the winemaker. The brewery comes from right down the street. Not as cool of a story, but still really cool. They use all local organic blood oranges for the blood orange wit we'll be drinking today. And then the chef who we love and adore is Nicoletta and Danny Hurley, who came from, she was the head chef at Italy, Brooklyn for about, 10 years, taught pasta, taught open fire cooking. So they'll come out and they're going to do 3 whole lambs that we just harvested 2 days ago, 20 whole chickens that were just harvested a few days ago. And then they're doing these huge, beautiful, whole prime ribs that were done, and then a bunch of local veggies and greens and everything cooked out over open fire. So it's a super special event. We have about 100 people coming. It sold out weeks ago, and we're super excited you can come too.
Well, it must be so satisfying to you, because this is the end game for a farmer, right? To provide food that is nourishing and a place for community.
Yeah, and the community is important to us too. Like, most of our good friends are either people we have from church or people we meet at these events. And it's an amazing chance to meet people. I always say, like, the food is great. My wife does all the design, so you'll see the tables and the flowers. Like, it's beautiful, but the best thing about these events is the people that you're going to meet. And so trying to really encourage people to open up, have a nice glass of wine, talk to somebody you don't know. I guarantee you have a lot in common with everybody that's here. We say, like the Joel Salatin thing, you're on the lunatic spectrum just by being here. And so we just try to encourage people to enjoy others' company. And that's missed so much nowadays. And Nicoletta talks about this a lot, of just in Italy, it's slowing down when we eat, It's not like the fast food thing is so foreign to that culture, because food's all about like slow down, take a deep breath, have a glass of wine. We're not going to rush the plates out to you. Like, it's going to be a slow food event, and we're going to enjoy each other. That's really what it comes back to, is like, let's enjoy community. And that's just a way for us to like model that. And honestly, we do it because we love them too. We totally enjoy these events and have a blast.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like it. I can't wait. So I want to ask you now, often at the end I'll say, if the listener could do one thing to improve their health, what would you recommend? But in this case, I want to ask you, if the listener could do one thing to get more in touch with where their food comes from, what would you recommend that they do?
Yeah, there's farm tours in every market that's out there, every food market that's out there. I think taking as many chances as you can to actually drive out on a Saturday, visit a farm. The good ones are always transparent, and they'll always have some kind of a tour program, or they'll say, come on out and check it out. Hands down, across the board, they want you to see what they do, because transparency is our best marketing in this business. And I would say, I know it feels like a sacrifice, but take a little bit of time out of a month or every few months and try to visit a new farm that's in your area. And you'll learn a lot about your region, what's good, what's bad. You get to meet these farmers. And even if you don't end up buying from them or supporting them, it's always a great experience. And so I just think when you're at the farmer's market, talk to the guy and ask if they have any kind of a tour program, if you can come visit the farm. And it's also a hack that I share a lot, because the other part of that is if they say no, that's a red flag, right? And if they say, oh no, we can't do tours for some reason, there's a few legitimate reasons why, but they're very few and far between. That's when my red flag radar starts to go off. I'm not saying because they don't do tours, they're automatically bad, but it can be a little bit of a scary sign. So when I go teach at Weston A. Price, I always end with like, just ask the person for a tour. And if they say yes, you don't even have to go. Like the fact that they offer it is a great first sign. If you had the time to go, then that's even better. But if they say no, we don't do that, I'd run the other direction too.
Well, that's great advice. I'm happy that we took you up on your invite here, and we're going to have a great time. So you guys, if you're ever out in Murrieta, California, come to Primal Pastures. Thanks so much, Paul.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Our guest today was Paul Grieve of Primal Pastures. Visit his website, primalpastures.com, and you can find me on the Holistic Hilda YouTube channel. And for the show notes for this and every episode of the podcast, go to the podcast page of our website, westonaprice.org. And that's it. Thanks for listening, everybody, and see you next time.
Wise Traditions is a project of the Weston A. Price Foundation for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts. The content on this podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended to substitute for the advice provided by your doctor or other healthcare professional. It is not intended to be, nor does it constitute healthcare or medical advice. On behalf of the Weston A. Price Foundation, thanks for listening. We have many free resources to support you on your health journey. Visit westonaprice.org to find podcasts, articles, videos, and more. You can also find a local chapter near you for help in finding sources of great food. We invite you to support the Foundation's mission of education, research, and activism by becoming a member. Thanks again, and take care.